5, 4, 3, 2, 1, live. There we go.
That happened fast.
I know.
We normally get a countdown. Not today because we've been gone for a couple of weeks. And so people have just been chomping at the bit, I guess, to get more Zócalo. I'm flattered.
I am flattered too. And I'm glad that people are, they had to put up a couple of our mishaps in Sector 14.
Yes. Well, that was quite an adventure, wasn't it?
It was.
I'm glad we're back in one piece because there were some times where I didn't know if I'd come back with a head full of gray hair or what was the deal. I mean,
or
thank
a
goodness
scar.
for time. Yeah. You just don't know with Sector 14 how that's going to go.
Or Zothras.
Poor Zothras. No one listens to Zothras.
He is Beast of Burden.
So, thank goodness for Zothras.
Welcome, everyone, to the Zócalo. Welcome. It's 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing your time with us this evening. And we have a fantastic show that we're going to get to really soon. And as you can tell by the banner, it's Marcus and Ivanova forever.
Let me ask you, Norm, do you ship them?
I do ship them, but how would we ship them? Would it be Marvanova?
Marvanova.
That's kind of cool.
That's a tough one. It doesn't have necessarily the catchy ring it needs.
How do you ship them?
I always just say either like Susan/Marcus. Mm-hmm. I don't do the whole Frangelina thing.
I totally ship them though. I mean, right?
Yeah, like in an ideal world, right? I totally ship them. Now, in the context of watching the show alongside with my husband, who's watching it for the first time, I'm seeing just so many reasons why this does not work and why it wasn't really ever going to work and why it breaks our hearts so bad.
The story or the relationship? The
relationship.
Okay.
Because the story, as it took its course, meaning the Babylon 5 story, not the story we're discussing today, it just, it kind of landed where it needed to. The impact of how it happened and why it all happened was far more powerful, I think, than if they had somehow had a happily ever after, or if they had tried a relationship and it didn't work.
No one's guaranteed a happily ever after, and I think that it's a bold choice in science fiction or any kind of like science fiction fantasy storytelling that you don't take that path of least resistance and give every hero or heroine the happy ending, because I think that takes a lot of the impact away from what actually meant most. And that's, in this case, would have been Marcus's ultimate sacrifice and he, in the relationship between the contentiousness of their relationship. It kind of saddles Susan with that's so like him. That's so like him, to strand me with this grief and this life debt that he gave me.
Once again,
right?
Ivanova is left to grieve. Yeah. So I'm very excited to talk about this story. If you have not read it, you can go on the internet and find it. I do believe there's a PDF out there that you can download. It did show up in a collection of short stories back when it was written in 2000. I can't believe that was 20 years ago now. Oh my God. I know. We're not that old.
20 years. Oh, geez.
20 years.
Is it time for somebody's life energy to be...
I could use some life energy. Yeah. How about you? Speaking
years.
Of which, I have some.
Do you? So do I.
Hey! Foul two!
It's good to see you back on the air, Char.
You too, buddy. I missed you.
Missed you too. So I'm going to go and read a little bit of what the notes said here so that I can catch everybody up. So all love is unrequited, quote Susan Ivanova. When we last saw them together, Marcus, giving the very last of his own life force to save an unconscious and dying Susan Ivanova, uttered with his dying breath, "I love you," a declaration and a confession that has remained unrequited until now. Space, Time, and the Incurable Romantic was the third Babylon 5 short story to appear in Amazing Stories magazine. It was written by Amazing Stories magazine. It was written by J. Michael Straczynski and published by Amazing Stories in issue 602 in the summer of 2000, 20 years ago, like you said, Char.
Yeah.
By his own account, JMS has blessed this story as being official canon to the Babylon 5 timeline.
Yeah, it's canon. It's canon, bitches.
Canon. Take that. By his own account, JMS has blessed the story's official canon, specifically the love and lives of Marcus Cole and Susan Ivanova. So on this episode of the Zócalo, we're going to review the story for the very first time together.
Yes.
And we're going to take a look at what happened to Susan and Marcus. And it's kind of like in that Princess Bride kind of way. Death can't stop true love. True love. What is that? Did you say true love? That's the greatest thing ever. Except for an MLT, a mutton, lettuce, and tomato sandwich where the mutton's cut nice and lean. And the tomatoes that are perky. I love that. No, but I'm sorry. I just digressed into Princess Bride.
You just totally went off, and I'm here for it. We're all here for it.
I do that sometimes.
It's all good.
So yeah, so we are looking at this short story that was about 16, 17 pages long, something like that.
Not even. I think it might have been 12. At least it was for the PDF I read.
Oh, I think I increased my font size for my crappy eyes. So yeah, so about 12, 14 pages long, somewhere around it.
It's a quick read. You know, you can get through it pretty quickly. That said, it's great, of course, because Joe wrote it. Right. And for those of us who maybe do want some sort of real resolution for this relationship, well, here is your answer. This is how it all truly ends.
So did you prepare a synopsis? Because I have a synopsis. Do you have a synopsis?
Oh, if you've got a synopsis, go ahead.
Okay. Well, it's a short synopsis because I want to get into some of the major points. But essentially what happens is that Marcus wakes up from cryogenic stasis or cryonic stasis.
Because if you're paying attention and sleeping in light, you know that was done upon the orders of Susan Ivanova. Exactly.
And that's one thing that's really hard to pin down on a VHS or on streaming because the quality is so bad. But if you can get a really good screenshot of and the end of Sleeping in Light, they had your characters. They're almost like their first appearance and their last appearance, what they looked like. Yeah. So with Jason Carter's Marcus, you had his very kind of like one of his first headshots, and then him in cryogenic stasis or cryonic stasis.
Yeah, and it's a bunch of text, as I recall.
Right, and that's under command of Susan Ivanova, blessed by at that time would have been President Delenn.
President Delenn.
Yeah, of the Interstellar Alliance.
Yeah.
So he wakes up from his cryonic stasis because I guess it would be kind of like a digital tombstone, only revive if technologically capable to do so.
Right. Essentially, they're trying to find a way to bring him back after giving all that life energy. And it was 300 years. That's how long it took to figure it out.
That's right. So 300 years in the future, the Minbari that revived him essentially told him that they found what they were looking for. They found the alien world that invented the healing device technology that we saw all the way back in Babylon 5, season 1, with the Dr. Laura. Dr. Laura.
And as I call her, yeah.
Right. And then that's the same technology that Stephen and Sheridan used to bring back Garibaldi from his coma, the same technology that Stephen Franklin logged into his medical records, the same medical records that Marcus hacked into to find a way to save Susan from basically a life-threatening injury at the hands of the Omega-class destroyers that were outfitted with shadow technology after she said she was the hand of God.
That's right.
Right. So he's revived. The technology is available. They were able to bring him back. And Marcus, much like anyone else that's been displaced for 300 years, he just wants to know why. Why me? And why now? And what do I do?
So, wouldn't we all be at a loss? Because everybody you knew is long gone. A lot of the things that you knew, for Marcus, from his point of view, because he is on Minbar, if I recall correctly, very little has actually changed on Minbar because it's Minbar and they like to stick to tradition. And meanwhile, there's little subtle changes, but it's great. Well, actually, I don't want to interrupt your synopsis. We'll get into the analysis later. I'll stop.
Okay. I just wanted to shout out to Terry Lynn, and Daniel Keller are with us tonight.
Hello, guys. Thanks for joining.
Others who are lurking, because I can see how many numbers we have.
We know you're out there, buddy. Say hi. We don't bite too hard.
That's right.
And Terry, I said at the top of the show, if you Google Space Time and the Incurable Romantic JMS, you can find a PDF to download of the story. I don't have that exact link right now, so at the end of the show, I can find it for you, and I'll put it in the chat bar.
Right, and I don't want my synopsis to replace, you reading it, because you really should read it. But to cover the broad strokes, so Marcus is revived from his cryonic freeze. He's been told that it was under orders to do so when the technology was available. And now he is also told by his Minbari handlers, those that revived him, that he has essentially a trust fund that has made him an incredibly wealthy man. He has
300 years will do that.
And he has like all of these, he basically has every single resource at his disposal to be able to live comfortably in this lifetime. But he's stranded. He's stranded without the people that he knew, obviously the woman that he loved, and a lot of questions as to what happened and why, and how do I get back to, how do I get back my own sense of purpose? Because the Rangers are far beyond what he remembered. They weren't this cause to fight for. They're now this intergalactic peacekeeping force like the Jedi Knights. And he's not of that mentality. He wanted to fight for a greater and more noble cause against the Great War, against the Shadows. Right.
So he's got nothing but time and is financially well off. He can have the most comfortable life he could possibly ask for. But what does he do with it?
Time and money and idle hands. What does he do? Well, he wants to figure out what happened to all of his friends, what happened to the people that he cared about. And through looking at historical records on Minbar, there is an area of great honor where all of his friends were laid to rest. Presidents Sheridan and Delenn, on Leshak Na of the Rangers, of which we saw Susan Ivanova basically get promoted to at the end of Sleeping in Light by Delenn. We saw that Susan Ivanova basically created a legacy of the Rangers that has never been matched. It's the richest part of her legacy, and something that I believe maybe was inspired by trying to do the best that she possibly could in the eyes of the Ranger that she wasn't able to save. And
that's in my head canon too, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, even before this story came to my consciousness, that's when I saw Sleeping in Light, I thought, there's a part of her that's doing this for Marcus.
Oh, I think so too. I think so too. Time. As much as she doesn't want to admit it.
She's trying to do something with the life she's been given, that second lease that he gave her.
Exactly.
She's finally going to do something that she's proud of with it.
Yeah, and I think it's a really nice way of segueing between these two stories, between Sleeping in Light and her recognizing that her military career with Earth Force was going nowhere. She really didn't have the heart anymore. The soul of and the spirit of her service there is done. But she wanted to go on to something greater on Minbar as head of the Rangers. And that's the 300-year legacy that she left behind. How strong the Rangers are now were because of her. But in finding her final resting place and seeing her holographically, there was a Minbari that set flowers on her grave and said that, do you not know of this great voice? And he's like, great voice of what? And he said, well, we've preserved her memory in some type of neural net, some type of, I hate to use a Star Trek term, but some type of positronic matrix. Right?
Yeah, her neural patterns are preserved in a facility on some crystal.
Right. And it's almost
I'm forgetting the terms.
But it's almost kind of like if you really want to look at it, it's almost a Terran or a Minbari version of a soul hunter's soul orb.
There you go. That's a good way of relating to it. Yeah.
Right. And it wasn't in just one soul orb, it was in multiple crystals. So anyway, Marcus being Marcus, with money to burn and still Marcus's know-how, he figures out a way to find the crystals, to find a way to have Susan's DNA cloned from a single strand of hair, to find a way to recryonically freeze himself so that as that clone is growing and being infused with the stolen memory crystals, so that she will grow in real time to her mid-30s, I believe it was.
Age 32.
Mm-hmm. He would recover from cryonic freeze and with this new cloned version of Susan Ivanova, would fake a crash landing on a planet that met her criteria for the most beautiful retirement and live their lives together in peace away from the entirety of what Susan remembered was the final days of the war.
Yeah, that's a good summation. And they lived happily ever after.
The end. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next week.
That's the show, guys. It's been really great. See ya.
Yep. Short story, short episode. Right?
There you go. Nice. Good job. Good job.
Thank you.
So, a few things to unpack here.
Oh,
one, let's start off with the fact that Marcus wakes up, has no idea what's going on. When he finally kind of does come to and gets his bearings, he's left, I think, with a similar sense of loss and just, oh my God, damn her, kind of a moment that she felt after she woke up and was restored to life. Just, what now? I thought I was dead. So that parallel, I love it.
And it's just kind of like it with Mark. No, first of all, I asked you this before we started recording. When you started reading this, you were reading it in Marcus's voice and in Susan's voice, and then kind of like filling in maybe the Minbari and the Drazi in between. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, 100%. Anytime I read any kind of a story where I know who the characters are, I see them, I hear them, they're in my head.
Yeah. Yeah. So in doing so, and hearing Marcus's voice in your head, you can see how exasperated he is by this one-upsmanship that they have with each other. You know, it's very playful, but it's like, she couldn't even let me die in peace.
Right? Yeah. That's just kind of it. She can't leave well enough alone.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And she did live, right? I love his little moment of freak out where it worked, didn't it? Oh my God.
Yeah. And it did work 300 years ago.
But then he kind of lost her all over again, knowing that she's long gone at this point. She's lived out her lifespan and then some. But Marcus, being Marcus, has all these funds that have, accrued over hundreds of years, finds a way. Now, I'm not the biggest mind to question the ethics of cloning somebody for the sake of personal happiness, fulfillment, what have you. I mean, you could maybe say Marcus is doing this for very selfish reasons.
Yeah, I'd like to save kind of that point towards the end where we can talk about, when she's cloned and stuff like that. That's a very good, it's a very good point though, but that's probably like the most important point we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
I kind of want to go through this chronologically a bit. So, so Marcus is on Minbar, and the one thing he's doing is he's kind of like fumbling his way around his new lease on life. What do you think that does to somebody when you like wake up? And we've seen this in science fiction many times, but you wake up and all of a sudden 300 years, you've been told that 300 years have passed. I mean, how do you think that sits with him? Do you think that because it's Marcus, it's just like, oh, well, or does it really kind of weigh on him? It's like, who am I? What's my purpose? It's like,
everything that you loved, everything that you stood for, everything that was happening in your moment before you were gone is no longer there. A lot of the things that you do recognize are still just a little bit different with the passage of time. How can they not?
Right. And do you think they didn't really, I don't think they said this in detail, but I don't remember them saying that he was cryogenically frozen as we last saw him in his Ranger's uniform with his Minbari fighting pike and all of his effects.
Oh, right. That was never specified. Now, for whatever reason, I always did envision him, but then it occurred to me this last time I read it before the show, I thought, well, he would get recognized as Ranger Marcus Cole by somebody, wouldn't you think? Because 300 years later, these guys are legends. The people that he knew, Sheridan, Delenn, Ivanova, they're all revered practically as gods on Minbar.
And if we believe deconstruction of falling stars to be true, the Great Burn would have wiped out a lot of history that was just illuminated in manuscripts as they were rebuilding Earth.
Had that happened by this time?
Oh yeah, because that part was like 10,000 years in the future.
Okay, because timeline-wise, I didn't quite put that together. What was happening when?
Yeah, or maybe it was 1,000 years in the future. And this is only 300 years in the future. So, oh yeah, so then Marcus would have been still kind of real-ish.
So you would think he would have gotten recognized, which makes me believe that they changed him out of his clothes.
Yeah, probably. Or he was in some type of, crowd. Like obviously his clothes maybe weren't. They couldn't survive cryogenic freeze for that long. I mean, it's only fiber.
Like, I don't know. Do you need some special cryo outfit or something? I don't know. But then when they grew Susan, and then she didn't have any clothes. So maybe Marcus was naked. I don't know, man. Maybe he's just in some Minbari robe. I don't know.
Well, it's kind of like, I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Demolition Man with Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes. When he went into cryogenic freeze, kind of like Austin Powers, they were just naked in a block of ice.
Yeah. Maybe that's how they do it. And then they give you something or another.
Well, think about this though. Like, so the cryonic suspension technology that Marcus was in was 300 years old before he got cracked open. So think about like how, like all of a sudden you're like, okay, so, this is some ancient ass technology. It's like literally like finding a fossil, that was, and if it weren't, and if it weren't for the fact that Delenn and the Interstellar Alliance had specific orders that beyond their lives, past their deaths, this cryogenic chamber was supposed to be like protected amongst some of the most revered relics that they have. Don't you think that would make people shake their heads like, what's in this thing?
You would think somebody would know. But this is also Minbar. We have to think about their mentality where people learn only what they need to know and when they need to know it.
That's true. I mean, what was it? Sinclair wasn't given that box from himself 2,000 years ago as Valen until that one day. Was it 1,000 years ago?
Yeah.
So that's a long time for somebody to say like,
hey, the Minbari know how to hang on, don't they?
Here's your mail.
1,000 years.
1,000 years. I was supposed to.
Awful service.
Just think about it. It's like if a family was entrusted to deliver the mail 1,000 years from that point, and that family gets wiped out, who delivers the mail?
Right? I don't know. Do they have a backup plan? I mean,
think about that. It's like this is chess. It's kind of like I'm not sure if you're familiar with there's Back to the Future 2. And there's a scene where at the very end where Marty McFly kind of gets a letter from a guy from Western Union. And this guy looks like he's decked out from like the 1950s. It's like, hey, I was supposedly, you're supposed to be here. And there was this bet that you were going to be, but you're here. Here it is. And this 100-year-old letter from Doc Brown saying like, Marty.
Yeah.
Like, hey, it's me.
So, one thing I did to put myself into Marcus's mindset to understand just how confusing it would be to find yourself 300 years in the future, I thought, what would happen if I went 300 years in the past? A lot of technology does not exist in the 1700s.
Right.
People speak English, but it's different.
Right.
Things have changed over the centuries. And so a lot of things, because a lot of things are the same, but then there's a whole lot that's different, and just the overall world is foreign.
Yeah, and I think that's why it was smart to put it on Minbar, because, like you said, the Minbari are very steeped in tradition and rites and custom, and maybe they don't view the passage of time as we do.
Yeah, it seems that they view it differently, and things maybe move a little more slowly on Minbar, or maybe it's some combination of that, and they really like to preserve their legacies a lot more hardcore than maybe we do.
Yeah, especially when it comes to this, and Marcus's chamber is a holy relic as far as anyone's concerned. So much like any,
like a pope.
Right. So anyone who's like interred in some type of holy casket, like Branmer was, you don't crack open his urn until everything is properly set and revered by who needs to, worship it and adore it. But,
oh my gosh. Norm, think about how many rituals they have around this whole thing.
Right.
Oh,
exactly.
Man.
Well, it's like the story of, and this is kind of like a very like Joe kind of thing to write in. there was the Minbari who brought flowers to Ivanova's grave like every day.
Every day on Delen's orders.
On Delen's orders. And Delen's already like 200 years past.
Yes.
But that's the same story that Londo told Jakar of the guard that stood guard, or the Centauri guard that stood guard of a tree, that the Emperor's daughter told him to stand in front of for like what, a couple hundred years, just because there was no counter order.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And Terry's got a great comment, I think, that reflects a lot of what we're saying right now, which is that this would not happen if he had been left on Earth.
No.
Somebody at some point would have screwed this up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because humans, we're not as good as Minbari as far as these types of things go. We don't preserve in quite the same fashion.
It depends. It depends. You know, I think it depends on, one, if it's religious, right?
True.
Because most religious either artifacts or buildings or things of that nature are well preserved. Like, you know, everyone freaked out when Notre Dame was burning, but no one freaked out if the apartment next to him was burning. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's true. It's true. And especially, okay, in Europe, there are castles and relics and wonderful historical objects that are thousands of years old, hundreds.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, here in the United States of America, we do not build things to last. We really do. Just tear it down, build a new one.
We used to. We used to.
But we really don't anymore. It's just everything is so disposable.
Right. But we used to. We used to build bridges to last. We used to build railroads to last, things of that nature. You know, when...
Yeah, well, we believed in
when the
infrastructure
was great. Yeah.
Yeah.
At one time. So, but the thing is,
anyway.
with, you know, when you're on Minbar, though, obviously, you know, they're obviously a far more religiously focused race. And
it's true. And what they hold sacred is dearly sacred.
Yes, for as long as you can and protect that memory. But now knowing that now Marcus has all of this disposable income, this trust fund.
Yeah, he can't burn through this money.
Right.
Well, theoretically, if he had just lived, gone on with his life, he'd have enough food, shelter, luxury items to his heart's content. He does manage to burn through the money, but aside from massive genetic and illegal means, he would have had more than enough.
Exactly. But he knew that piecing together three things: one, the money; two, Susan's preserved neural pathways; and then three, the obvious cloning technology that was far more advanced now than it was. You know, so putting those three together.
You know what? Sorry to cut you off again. But you know what? I think maybe he had been preserved in his ranger clothes, at least to start, because one of her hairs was on his clothing. That's where he got it, right?
Right. I'm just wondering if he was buried with them or if they were kind of like folded up and stuck in a box next to him.
Yeah, maybe maybe that's initially what he put on because that's what they had for him. Yeah. But I don't know.
Wouldn't it be cool though if you're like a ranger and like now and all of a sudden like Marcus strides in, it's like, dude, those robes are like legendary. No one wears those robes anymore, man. Let me see your fighting pike. Nobody has a fighting pike like that anymore, man. We have lightsabers. Right?
Oh, you're crossing the streams here.
I'm just wondering like what Minbari fighting pike would look like 300 years from now.
You know? But what would it be that different?
I don't think so, because I fight with swords, right? And
swords have been around for centuries.
Thousands of years. So yeah, it's tradition, and the Minbari fighting pike is tradition. So Marcus now.
I mean, you can't mess with perfection.
No, and I don't know. Maybe Marcus was wearing sunglasses. Who knows?
Is that a Star Trek Picard callback? Love it.
I'm just throwing that in there.
Oh my God! If you guys aren't watching Picard,
you should
give it a try, man. I'm enjoying this.
Yeah, I love Picard.
They're doing good work, real good work. I'm excited.
So you have these three things. You have these three things that Marcus is working with. You're dealing with. He has the money. Yeah. He has the motivation. He has.
He's motivated.
Right? He has the motivation, and now he has kind of like this cause, right? This cause.
Yeah. So how does Marcus always finds a way, right? He's got the means. Mm-hmm. Now the question is how, and he finds the how.
So that kind of goes into, I guess, Marcus's either Selfish or selfless motivation? How do you categorize it?
My instinct is to say selfish. He is doing this for himself. This is what's going to fulfill him and his life. Now, an Ivanova clone with the memories right up to the point where she goes rendered unconscious in the battle, and, of course I'm skipping ahead a little bit, where there's no hope of coming back from everything. She can leave it all behind and live happily ever after. Mm-hmm. I imagine there's a very tired part of Ivanova who's all too happy to go along with this.
Well, I guess that's kind of like the whole selfish versus selfless question that I think that the story raises, because you're right. Obviously, Marcus is doing it to fulfill the life that he felt he was robbed of.
Yes.
Because of his sacrifice. Now, obviously, he's not feeling robbed in that way. It's like he sacrificed himself because that's what he chose to do.
Yes.
But they never had a chance. They never had a chance. And Susan never had a chance to be happy because Marcus gave her the ability to live, but a life without him. Right?
Uh-huh.
So you have these two opposing forces of the selfish act of creating her and the selfless act of giving her the life that she was supposed to have if, in fact, they were able to be together. Now, it's not necessarily the same life, though, because he's manufactured a future for them that he believed they both wanted, especially her, based on the description of her retirement.
Now, if he is 100% accurate about it, she's going to say, okay, cool. I think I can hang with this. Right. But what if in the sequel to this story, she says, this is complete bullshit. I'm getting out of here.
Well,
but I mean, we can't go there. It's not happening.
That's kind of like a supposition, and Terry says here, I don't agree because Ivanova was a warrior. She would not want to be idle. You know what, though? I disagree, Terry. I don't disagree with the fact that she was a warrior. That's tried and true. She was a soldier.
Yeah.
But all soldiers become weary of war. All soldiers, become weary of killing, especially if there's no right or just cause.
Right. And here's the thing. Marcus can just tell her, hey, we won the war.
Right.
We're good. Everything is good. Now, there is a part of me that wonders, why wouldn't she want to go out there and see it for herself and then realize that, everything's a little different? She'll find out that they're in the future, which is why he has to create this whole shipwreck planet, we can't leave type of a thing, which is such a romance novel trope.
True.
I'm looking at you, Resolution, Star Trek Voyager.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
But I mean, I get his motivation now. Yeah, it is hard to what?
But why subject somebody that that should have a better, happier ending, subject them to a future where there's any kind of effect that would ruin that? It's like, isn't what he wanted to do to give her the life that she should have had?
Yeah. Well, and you know what? I do think that Susan would be all too happy to relax for a little while. My big question is would she get restless and want to see more of the galaxy again? I don't know.
Well, this reminds me of a movie called 100 First Dates, where it's. Have you seen
Wasn't it 50 First Dates?
Was it 50 First Dates?
I think so. I didn't see the movie, but I think that's the title.
50 First Dates. So Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore, they fall in love, but the thing is that she has short-term memory loss or long-term memory loss or something like that. Like she can only remember the day. And as soon as she goes to bed, she wakes up the next morning and her memory is completely reset.
Okay.
To reset to like the last long-term memory that she can hold on to. So what he does is that he records the entire day so that when she wakes up, she can see like, oh, this is what happened today. We went fishing or we went on a boat trip or, we went on a lovely stroll. Hey, Dana, thanks for joining us. You're never late on YouTube because you can always rewind. This episode,
you can always go back.
So with Marcus and Susan, it would be a really interesting story to follow them, like in a second Lost Tales, maybe, right?
Yeah.
Where Marcus has been kind of curating Susan's life and only letting her go to places where she wouldn't discover the actual truth. But 300 years in the future, there wouldn't be any truth left for her to find.
Yeah. But Susan is also so very smart that she would kind of find little clues that would tell her what's really going on. And as clever as Marcus is, I don't think he's going to be able to stop her.
But it's 300 years, man. That's like the trail is cold when that, that long ago.
But I mean, does eventually the truth come out, and then she's just at that point like, okay. And then what? We've got a nice happy shack on this planet. We're doing just fine. Why change now? I mean, I think that might be the eventual thing where the truth does come out, but it doesn't matter at that point?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a great way to extend like the what if of this story. But I think that in Marcus's estimation, I think that all he really wants to do is kind of see that the continuation of when they first left each other, like when Marcus left her, and then when, obviously she would leave him. In that moment, it's kind of like a Romeo and Juliet moment. It's like, oh, poison, oh, stabbing, oh God, what happened? Why would you do that? But
oh dear,
right? Does that mean that all love is not unrequited in this sense, as long as there's cloning and money?
Is that what you need to cure unrequited love? I mean, if you're getting to the real heart of the story, I mean, those do seem to be the means by which to fix this little problem. You need time and money and cloning. Cloning of which is illegal, by the way. But if you just know the right people and you can get past certain security protocols without anybody caring, you can pull it off.
And then, sequester yourself off to like this completely isolated world that no one's going to find you. But that's the great thing, though. Like all of a sudden, the sequel of this story, the next 14 pages is that some ship lands there, looking for that. We heard that Susan Ivanova, the great commander and the endless shock of the Earth and Interstellar Alliance, is back. We need her to head up some kind of blah, blah, blah. That's the sequel that nobody wants to see ever.
No, I really do think, I mean, it ends here, right? It ends with happily ever after because, and I'm going to give away my final thought right now.
No, we
still have a fairy tale.
Why? We got 20 minutes.
I don't want to miss it. And I already gave it away. This is a fairy tale because it ends with happily ever after. It's a great work of fiction.
Mm-hmm. It's a canonical fairy tale then.
Yeah. Oh, and it's canonical. It happened. It's for real. And I'm very super happy with it.
It's a holodeck fantasy then?
No.
Kinda? No?
No, it's not a holodeck fantasy because there's a certain level of fakeness to that. No. I feel like since this is a fairy tale, it does work out. And they do live happily ever after, and they can finally kind of come to terms with what feelings they do have. Ivanova can work on opening up her heart. Marcus, the hopeless romantic, he can finally have the woman of his dreams. And it's a little too good to be true, but there it is.
Yeah, and why not, right? Like, why can't these two have a happy ending?
Well, they were never allowed the chance in the show proper.
Right.
Which, a lot of fanfic will find ways to make these types of things happen. This is JMS writing fanfic. It just so happens he is the man, and therefore it is canon.
But is it necessary? Is it fanfic when it comes from the author?
No. But what I'm saying is he's taking his wildest fantasy, like a lot of fanfic writers do, making it work out, and then making it a thing. It just so happens that he gets the privilege of it being canon.
I'd love to know, and because I haven't read this and I haven't seen it on Wikipedia or Lurker's Guide or anything like that, did he have this in mind at that moment, like when he wrote Marcus's death? Did he have this in mind? Because obviously that scene in Sleeping in Light was in mind, or else they wouldn't have filmed it in season 4 in the end credits.
That's a tough question because Marcus was not going to die until the whole thing, JMS has said he would have kept Marcus alive had he known Claudia Christian was going to not re-sign her contract after season 4, and he might have let Ivanova die, and Marcus would have gone on.
And I'm glad it didn't happen that way because we would have been robbed of probably one of the best performances that we've seen in Babylon 5 and certainly in Claudia Christian's career.
As much as I just, it's heart-wrenching, but if we didn't get that, man, I kind of wonder how would it have been different and how could it have been better? I have a hard time imagining that. Is like I kind of want my heart to be broken with this relationship a little bit.
Right, and that's literally one of the best scenes I've ever seen in TV, like ever. That was
I know.
Unbelievably well acted.
Like I know you watched Claudia Christian talk, her scene talking with Franklin about Marcus before reading the story. I highly recommend doing that because it puts into your head all those feelings. How did she not get nominated for so many awards? It's such a shame that science fiction got so shunned from the award shows in that day.
I want to jump into some of the comments here.
Please do it.
Because we left off with Terry Lynn saying, I don't agree because Ivanova was a warrior. She would not want to be idle. But I do have to address something here. And I don't want you to feel uncomfortable, Terry Lynn, at all, me addressing this question. Because she asked, Norm, ask your doctor father about this. When a person is put under, they wake up with the same emotions as they had before. If they are in fight or flight, they awake with the same. I would like to.
Yeah, you can't.
But if it weren't for the fact that my father passed away 10 years ago. So I know you didn't know that, and please don't feel uncomfortable asking that. But I would love to ask him that because he would come up with some strange, Norm, why are you so dumb that you didn't know this? Or because I spent so much money on your education kind of response.
But that's the real life reason.
Right. But, to the question itself, when a person is put under, they wake up with the same emotions they had before. If they are in fight or flight, they awake with the same.
Is that true?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't. And the thing is that you're dealing with, people being put under in a chemical way. I don't know that if cryonic freezing and anesthesia, as we know it, are different, how they would affect the psyche, because anesthesia is a chemical manipulation of basically removing you from consciousness. No, Terry Lynn, don't feel sorry about that. I know it's a great question. It's a great question, and we're answering it now. So if a chemical induced subconsciousness is being manipulated in that way, what does cryogenic freezing do to a consciousness, and how do they come back from that? Because obviously his muscles are atrophied. He can't stand up. He can't walk. He can't lift himself out of his own his own situation. So what does that do to your mind? What does that do to
don't you think it would be similar?
Well, I mean, the thing is that the brain keeps working, right?
You think yes and no. I mean, on a very minimal level, maybe, but everything essentially just has to be kind of, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I shouldn't even talk. I don't know.
It's the thing is that there's a certain level of subconscious that keeps working, as you're unconscious. That's the subconscious mind protects your conscious mind from that, so that your brain just doesn't completely just dissociate itself, from.
But is that enough to keep the brain from atrophy as well?
I don't know, and that's the interesting thing about the chronic freezing, like especially for that long. Like how does the brain stay active? Like is Marcus in a dream state this entire time?
Oh, now that would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And
having a 300-year-long dream, dang, I hope it was good.
Or in the quantum state that he's in, technically, it may have been a minute-long dream. You don't know. That's the thing is with being in that state is that he's quantumly frozen because his I hate to get nerdy on this, but I've been reading a lot about quantum state and quantum physics. And once your body is put in stasis, technically all of your molecules are frozen in time.
So then you wake up and it feels like virtually nothing has passed. Yes?
If in fact that all of your molecules, your atoms, your electrons, everything was frozen instantaneously so that there's nothing actually moving, there's no dynamic in your body at all, then yes, it should. Because with anesthesia, nothing's frozen in your body. Your body's tricked into going into being an unconscious state.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So we need a cryonic expert to come in and chime in to really give a definitive answer to this. And I don't know if they exist in our day and age. Yeah.
We'll have to see if we can get Dr. Noonien Sung, or Agnes Girardi,
and allegedly Walt Disney is frozen somewhere out
underneath. He's underneath the statue.
There you go. There you go. So whoever's in charge of that, let us know, huh? Send Gmail to.
I got to ask you a tough question though, Char, about this story, because it's something that it's something that I think that needs to be asked. Is that is there anything immoral about what Marcus did?
That's a very good question, right? Because he commits an illegal act to clone Susan and raise her essentially up to 32 years of age with her memories right up to the point where she is rendered unconscious. Now, on a legal level, yes, strictly speaking, he did an illegal thing. So if you're judging just on that, if legal and moral are on the same side, he did something wrong. As a person, Marcus is, he doesn't necessarily, I'd say that the line is much more blurred for him.
Well, I mean, put it to you another way, is that he never really asked Susan's permission if Susan ever wanted to be reincarnated in such a fashion, right?
There's that whole thing too. He has no consent from her.
Right? So he's creating a version of Susan Ivanova that essentially has the memories of Susan, the DNA of Susan, but not the soul of Susan, right?
Yeah, he's making another person.
Exactly. So, and I know that that's not Marcus's intent to create kind of like this perverted robot version of Susan Ivanova. That's not what he wants to do, understanding Marcus the way we understand Marcus. But it's kind of like Frankenstein, right?
A little bit.
Frankenstein's monster and the intent and the preservation of what Frankenstein wanted to do to the intellect that he wanted to put into the monster, to the physicality, to everything that he wanted to do to replicate human life, to preserve human life. It was perverted in some sort of way, because you cannot replicate a soul according to so many different religious doctrines and dogmas. So what is this Susan Ivanova? And let me ask you another question. I mean, I'm going to ask everybody else here. If in fact the soul hunters had to come after her, would they be able to actually achieve anything?
Would she at this very raw point even have a soul to take? Because I feel like that's essentially what she would have to be building. She's got the memories, she's got the body, and she has everything but that. So then from there on, she can build that, I suppose, as her own entity. But she's starting from that point, yes?
Yes, yeah. And I don't think the Minbari would have ever sanctioned what Marcus is doing. Marcus went completely rogue on all of this. I think
they would shun him hardcore.
Yeah.
How dare you?
Right, because they're doing something that is so explicitly forbidden to like Minbari religious dogma, because you're dealing with something that's so singularly unique to a living human being.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's everything that Susan should be, but the core of her is no longer Susan.
Right. And so I guess for Marcus, this is his consolation prize, in a sense. He can't get the real Susan at this point. So he's going to get the next best thing. And this is the closest that he can possibly get. And so for him, okay, is it then happily ever after?
Right.
Because what if this person really isn't Susan? You know?
And there are some great comments now coming in. This is exactly what I wanted to see. So Terry Lynn says, all three decisions were not with permission. Ivanova's return, Marcus's freeze, and Ivanova's clothing. And you're right. We didn't consider that. Marcus is
so true.
Preserving Marcus.
Yes. He didn't ask to be frozen. That wasn't in his will.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dana says, I suppose we need to define exactly what soul is. And Terry Lynn says, that is the biggest question of all. What is the soul? Where does it live, exist? And this takes me back to probably, and after watching Picard, it's probably like the most pivotal episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation I've ever watched, and that's The Measure of a Man, because that's where Picard asks Bruce Maddox, why doesn't Data have a soul? What does this person, Data, what does it have to do? What does he have to achieve sentience, to have a soul, to have consciousness, right? So Bruce Maddox said, well, in order for him to be a sentient being, he has to be aware of his own surroundings. He has to have intelligence, and he has to be able to understand and comprehend complex problems. So if you meet all those criteria, if Susan Ivanova's clone meets all that criteria, does she have a soul? Is she sentient? Can she understand her own self-awareness? Can she understand and comprehend complex issues? And can she understand and comprehend her own self-worth? Does that constitute a soul?
Such a good question. There's not an easy answer there. I would say, strictly speaking, I mean, yeah, she has all the she's equipped to handle all those things, and therefore you could say yes, she has a soul. But if I'm a Minbari, I'm saying this is a new soul. This is a new Susan Ivanova.
Right.
This is Susan 2.0.
Is this Tuvix?
No, I wouldn't go that far.
Okay,
she's not melded with another being. It's still her, but it's another version of her.
Okay, so let's go to Enterprise. Is this Sim?
Now you're getting closer. Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah, because Sim had a completely different set of experiences for that short while, yeah?
And the thing is that he inhabited every single chromosome that Trip Tucker had. He was Trip Tucker.
Yeah.
Right?
But he was still a different person with different feelings, different expectations and experiences. It's the whole nature versus nurture debate, right?
And he was
what
also
you go through shapes you.
Yep. He was also cloned and grown in a lab.
That's right. And Phlox raised him.
Right.
Yeah. So
similitude. I'm telling you, people, if you want to watch a great episode of Star Trek Enterprise, you got to watch, was it season 3? Similitude.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good.
Brilliant episode. Terry Lynn asked a really good question. Do animals have souls? Well, we're animals.
Oh my God. Oh, we're getting so deep today. Dang.
It's so Star Trek-y.
Let me say this, Terry. I want to believe that they do. I feel like every living creature does.
I have to
even the
agree.
Ones without a face. I'll
tell you what.
We're all living beings.
I trust animal souls more than I trust most humans.
Me too.
At
least they're better than we are.
They understand their purpose in their own ecosystem. They know what they are. Yeah, they know what they are. Yeah. And then the thing is with what is oh my gosh, we're getting so existential. I didn't think we were going to go this way. But
I'm having an existential crisis right now.
I think I need to have more bourbon. But in all honesty and in all seriousness, the whole issue with what is a soul? What is the concept of soul? I mean, that really does kind of like steep all the way back into religious belief and religious dogma. If there is no religious belief or dogma per se, then the soul technically doesn't exist. Because a lot of people think that, once you die, you become, basically nitrogen for enhancing the soil that you are buried in. That's one way. Baby. Exactly. That's one way of looking at it. The other way, and this is something that I love about Star Trek, and I love getting into these conceptual debates with people, is that the transporter in and of itself has a 99.999999% chance of being able to replicate you in exactitude from transporter to transporter to transporter, right? That means that you have a 0.00000001 degradation in your pattern buffer, which means that the person that you are before you transported does not exist anymore.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And what percentile?
It's not you anymore. Bones is right.
Right? And once that percentile starts adding up because you're transporting hundreds of times over the course of your career in Starfleet?
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially the person that transported for the very first time does not exist to the last time. Which means
does that make you lesser of a person?
Does that mean they have less of a soul? Does the soul exist anymore once the body is turned into energy? Isn't that transubstantiation in a way?
Oh my God.
Flesh to energy, energy to flesh?
Oh yeah. That's so freaking good. I really do think Bones has a point about that whole thing.
Yeah. I mean,
because it's all that you were just talking about right now.
Well, it's kind of like what Dan is saying. Like, I was wondering when the transporter conversation would come up, does it not produce a duplicate of you or not? And it technically does, because
it's like making a copy.
let's take Relics, for example. Okay, this is
I
season
was
what,
just about
right?
to. Yep.
Was it season 5? Next Generation, season 5 or 6?
Oh God, I
think
it was 5.
5.
I think it was 5. 91, right?
Right. So
Okay.
Scotty was stuck in the pattern buffer, like that, of the ship that survived the crash into the Dyson sphere, right?
Yeah.
And he was in there for what, 80 years?
I want to say 75, but you might be right with 80.
But
it was a long time.
Right. And his pattern it was on a loop that degraded over time, but not to the point where they couldn't revive Scotty. But the thing is that even if you degrade to the most infinitesimal decimal point, it's not you anymore. I'm 100% right now, right?
For now.
And if I go through the transporter, I'm not 100% anymore.
Maybe not. Yeah. And there's that whole theory too, where say you are preserved in a transporter beam like Scotty was, you could technically de-age yourself, yeah? Because you've got a copy of yourself in the transporter buffer that's younger than if you had just been, continuing on.
You're correct. That's right. So Scotty should have been 80 years older than he was. And that technically violates the eugenics accords. So
Scotty, you're illegal.
How did we start from Marcus, I'm in love with you, Susan, to eugenics transporter accords? I love this show.
Ethics.
It is ethics. It really is. And was it so? Just to kind of like round about this discussion.
Yeah.
Was it or was it not ethical for Marcus to do what he did?
Probably not. I'm going to side there. Yeah. Now, that said, I don't think he cared. He had the means, he had the will, and he was going to do what he was going to do.
Where do ethics cross the line with the Terran understanding, the human understanding of ethics versus self-interest? Right?
I don't think there was a line with him as far as those two issues are concerned. It was, okay, I'm not giving Marcus a whole lot of credit here, but I'm thinking he is strictly just, you've got the id, the ego, and the superego, yeah?
Yeah.
It's pure id here. This is the one thing in his life that might make him happy. And so he has got to go for it. If it doesn't work out, he tried.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, but I'm saying if it does work out, he's satisfied. This is the life he always wanted.
Where did that head bob come from? You were like, satisfied. The thing I thought there was like a kind of like Marcus.
Marcus.
Yeah. I think though that when it comes to what Marcus did, I think he was doing so. Like, do you take the emotional context of what he did and apply kind of like all our moral dogmatic belief system on that versus what he believes is truly the right thing to do, and to give her a chance at any kind of happiness, that giving her a gift, like, you weren't destined for happiness in your former life, but I can give you this happiness now. And if Marcus was really truly just kind of like doing it for himself, then we wouldn't have gotten those character building inferences of, I don't want to see her in that way. I don't want her to be, I don't want her to be exposed to me. I want this thing to happen organically. If she's going to fall in love with me, it's because I did my job at bringing her consciousness back to her body, and whatever feelings were there that were preserved in these neural buffers would manifest themselves still, right?
Yeah,
because they are preserved. Not like I'm gonna create the Susan bot and have her fulfill my every whim. That's not where he was.
No, that's so very true. Right. Yeah. He doesn't want somebody who's just going to easily succumb to his whim. No, he does want it to happen naturally. And here's the real kicker about that, is he does not know about the unrequited love speech. At least that's not something we get from the story.
No, that was Susan's story or Susan's soliloquy to Stephen Franklin, and hers alone.
So, does Marcus know that Susan did in fact love him? Or is he just going out on a limb, hoping that this gesture will work?
Well, this is, that's a great question. I'm going to tie this one up with a big red bow. at the end of this episode, because it goes all the way back to the title of this story, and that's the Incurable Romantic.
Right. And really, at the heart of it, that is entirely what this story is.
If she actually doesn't even manifest her romantic feelings towards him, that's okay. He wants her to continue because that's the romantic in him. He loves her so much that he just wants for her to live this particular life as happy as she possibly can, away from war, strife, service.
I mean, that's true. I mean, we don't know what kind of a life they led together. If they had a life together at all, maybe they just coexisted on this planet, but he was happy enough to live his life beside her once again.
Marcus was, because he's this incurable romantic, Marcus was okay with her just being happy. That was his love for her. Like, if she's happy, then I'm happy. Right? It doesn't have to manifest itself in a physical or romantic relationship as we know it.
Yeah,
it goes beyond that. It's like, and that's the thing. It's like, it's that pure love. It's like the love that Lanier has for Delenn, right?
Yeah, it's incredibly. Well, no, I'd honestly say that Marcus's love is pure. I think he's trying to do the wrong thing for the right reasons. Lanier is doing the right thing for the wrong reasons.
Well, he did one wrong thing, really wrong.
One really wrong thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's an interesting parallel too to make with that.
And maybe that's
knowing how that did not work out.
Maybe we should talk about that in the next episode, like unrequited love, part 2.
Is all love unrequited?
Yeah, I mean, Lanier and Delenn. Terry Lynn has this one last comment. What is ethics? A thought of humans in the mind. Yeah, I mean, like ethics is kind of like it's a practice of our own like personal and moral and human dogmatic belief system that we apply to what was right and what was wrong based on how we were raised, right? If we were raised in a faith-based system, then it would be this. If we weren't, it would be this, right? But I think that in the nature of human beings, there is what we believe is right and we believe is wrong. And that's in varying degrees based on kind of like what religious dogmatic faith you believe in. But I think that there is an inherent belief in all humans that, you have to do right by yourself. You have to do right by others. I think there's there's a general understanding.
We don't have to even listen, or we don't have to be limited by religious construct. I feel like a lot of humanity, we have certain universal truths. However, they are human constructs. All of them.
I'm sorry.
Oh no, starving kitty, emergency, Terry, go. You can catch up with us later.
Yeah, your cat will cut you.
Don't make the kitty angry.
So
my cats are so mad sometimes if I'm late. Ooh, we start to get the talking to now, which is kind of fun because at first, way back when, the cats used to just be very passive aggressive with their anger, and we've been waiting for you. Now we get the stare down, we get the talking to. Eventually, we'll get read the riot act.
Get over here.
It's about freaking time. Where's the food? Anyway.
So I thought that was a fabulous discussion. We were almost entering like Star Trek Roddenberry level discussion.
Yes. And I tell you what, for 12 pages of material, this story brings up a lot of questions, a lot of thoughts. And if you have not read it, I'll just say, go read it and share your thoughts with us. It doesn't have to end here.
Yeah, send us emails, send us your communications. Here's a couple different ways that you can find us. You can find us on all the social media channels. You can find us, please email your stuff to the Zócalo marketplace at gmail.com. You can find us obviously here on YouTube. Make sure that if you like what we were doing here, make sure that you like it and subscribe it and share it. Hit that bell button so that that all the new episodes are kind of like coming into your feed. You can find us on Twitter at Zócalo Livecast. You can also find us on Reddit at the Zócalo. And the one thing that Char and I are incredibly thankful for is that there has been a great increase in listeners and subscribers to our channel, and I'm really thankful for that because it's just it's nice to have like a new crop of Babylon 5 fans pop up every once in a while to know that you're not the only ones out there. Oh, and also, and Char, we should talk about this also in the next episode. is that Babylon 5 is leaving some of the streaming platforms, especially Amazon Prime.
Oh, yeah, that's already happened, right? Where it's left Amazon Prime.
Yeah. So
that's
that
too
was
bad.
That was kind of like the one thing that kind of like sparked us to like do this particular project.
Yeah, it was in 2018. That's kind of what really got us going, was that resurgence of people. Oh, Babylon 5 is on Amazon Prime. Well, I can finally watch it.
Right. So hopefully Comet is still like, they're still in rotation, and maybe, oh gosh, there was another one that I can't remember.
Yeah. As far as I know, Comet is still going.
Mm-hmm.
And
Pluto,
then
is it on Pluto still?
That's a very good question. I do not know. If anybody out there knows, please chime in. I have Pluto TV on my Roku. Maybe I'll just, do a little quick scroll through and see what happens, and then try and update on Twitter.
Yeah, it might be there. I don't know.
Even so, the best way I feel still, and has been for a long time, is if you don't have a copy of the DVDs, you know what? If you have the means, if you have the money, cough it up, just get them. Right. And that way they're at your disposal all the time, because you just never know when these platforms are going to go away.
And the great thing about DVDs is that you get all 5 seasons, and it depends on what box set that you buy, you also get Crusade. So you get the entirety of it. Now you don't get all the TV movies, because I don't think that Lost Tales is involved.
You don't get Lost Tales. I think you get everything else except for maybe right. Yeah. But I think you get things like In the Beginning and Third Space, River of Souls.
Right. And what was the other one? In the Beginning. Oh, and In the Beginning, River of Souls, Third Space. Call to Arms.
Call to Arms. Thank you.
Call to Arms at Legion and Crusade. So yeah. Thank you, Terry Lynn. Yes. She says, thank you for both doing this. Interesting conversation, so deep. That's what we want.
Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks for everybody tuning in. And I really do think, Char, that we should kind of investigate Lanier and Delen's relationship. And
I've got theories, so let's go.
Yeah, for sure. So is All Love Unrequited Part 2? We'll take a look at that next time that we do the Zócalo cast. Thanks everybody for chiming in and turning into our show on our new time. That's 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, thank you so much. Make sure that you stay in touch with us. Make sure you follow our feed. And until next time, be seeing you.
Bye.